You've probably heard that third-party cookies are going away. And in addition, we have an opportunity to invest in first-party cookies. That is, cookies where someone who's visited your website is giving consent to use that data to better target those folks, both on property and away from your property in other places like Google Ads. So today's guest will walk you through how to utilize that data, how to do contextual advertising, and what measures to put into place to know if it's all working. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Devin Webb from EETech. Hey Devin, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Wendy. Thank you.
It was only a few weeks ago that we were together in person in Austin at the Industrial Marketing Summit and finally got to meet like in real life. That was so cool.
Yeah, no, it was a great event. Learned a ton. It was a good opportunity to get up and kind of face some of my fears and speaking in front of a lot of people. So it was overall just a great event. So thank you for inviting me.
You bet. And you did a wonderful job. And I know you prepared quite a bit to make sure that everything went smooth. So this podcast should be easy today because we're covering a lot of the same material. Before we get started though, I know that Morgan gave you some advice on what to see and do in Austin, and you had added a lit'll bit to your trip. What'd you end up doing? What'd you see? What was fun?
Yeah, so I kind of went around downtown a little bit and I ate a lot of chili.
Awesome.
Yeah, after the event, I was somewhat tired. So I was actually back in my hotel room at like 10, crashed out, and then flew home the next day. I mean, it was a pretty busy week with all of the events and whatnot. And
Yeah.
so it was good to just kind of cruise around and walk around Austin. It's the first time I'd ever been to Austin. So it was, pretty cool exploring the city and eating all of the great food.
Awesome. Good. Well, I'm glad you had a nice time while you were in my hometown.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought it would be helpful for people to just get to know you and where you're coming from. So you're the Performance and Innovation Manager at EETech. That's quite a title. What does that mean? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So on a day-to-day basis, I work really closely with our performance marketing team. I also work with our SEM or Google Ads management team. But then I coordinate quite often with sales, meeting with clients, kind of just discussing the opportunities that they might have with targeting opportunities, but then of course helping our sales team sell the digital solutions that we offer.
Yeah.
And kind of more in my background, that kind of goes back to what I did and went to school for, is primarily advertising, and then kind of fell into the world of digital marketing. It was funny because I was originally in print, selling print, newspaper ads and whatnot, but with the change of circulation, with the change of just that industry as a whole, I navigated, really easily into the digital world, where I was essentially selling digital solutions for clients, mostly in small to medium sized businesses, and then transitioned to another company working with radio sellers, helping them kind of navigate the digital world to some extent, meeting with clients still, and then ended up with EETech, where still working very closely with sales, but more so from a performance or innovation standpoint, and making sure that our campaigns deliver on objectives, but then also ensuring that clients have a clear understanding of what we're capable of and what goals they might want to consider when they're running any digital campaigns.
Yeah. And I find it interesting that you do some what I'd label sales enablement activities with your sales force, because at the end of the day, they're targeting marketers, right? So you're kind of their ICP in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of them, it seems, from EETech side of things, being a publisher, we kind of started out as a community forum for a lot of engineers of different types. But there was a lot of opportunity in just getting a lot of clients in touch with those specific forums or the individuals that are interacting with those forums. So yeah, definitely work very closely with sales, but then also ensuring that we're delivering the proper content to the engineers while they're actually actively shopping for a component or looking at specific applications.
Yeah. Okay. Well, your presentation to the folks at IMS that I was so excited about that when I wanted to bring you onto this podcast was talking about the cookieless future. And so I'm sure everybody knows what you're hinting at there, but I thought before we, get real deep in the topic, can you just give us the basic definition of what a cookie is and how they're used so that everybody's grounded in what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so a cookie essentially, and they're kind of going away to some respect, but a cookie is essentially when you visit a website, that server will tag your device with a piece of text file essentially. And what that does is that the next time that you visit that website, it will identify or send that information back to the server and be able to identify you based on your device. So it allows for personalized content to be delivered. It allows for direct login. It allows for just various tracking opportunities so that they can deliver ads to you later on down the road, but more importantly, identify who you are based on your device. And I think it's
Okay.
important to distinction there between a first-party cookie and a third-party cookie, because a first-party cookie is essentially that website that's cookieing you, saying, "Hey, you visited their website." While a third-party cookie may be when you're delivering a website or when you arrive at a website and it's another website or another company that has a cookie on the website that you're visiting. So it's a third party away from the actual website. And a lot of times that happens on, chatbots. A lot of times it happens on social media buttons, things like that. And that's kind of what's going away is that third party cookie, or companies that you're not explicitly giving consent to that are now able to track you across the web. And that's kind of what I would consider to be the Wild West or the old time cookie methods,
Yeah.
where they were able to identify you, but you didn't explicitly know that that cookie was tracking your behavior.
Right. So would you give me a consumer example of that?
Yeah, so there's quite a few. A chatbot or a social media button would be probably one of the prime ones. So, or
Mhm.
even let's say you go to a major news website. That news website may have a type of cookie that tracks you, but it's not tied to the actual news organization that you're visiting. It may
I
be a
see.
completely different company. And so now that other company knows your details from how much money you make, tracking other third party cookies that are available across the web, to where you sat on an airplane, even things that you do on your
Yeah.
cell phone. I know there's been a lot of documentaries lately that show location services on your phone,
Good
because you've
example.
adhered or consented to the privacy policy with your Apple device or your Android device. Those third party companies can now determine where you've been, track conversion and foot traffic. There's a lot of different things that go into tracking that, but the third party cookie is kind of going away because consumers are demanding a lot more privacy. And with that, there's a lot more laws that are being enacted, not just within the United States, but across the globe in various areas.
Okay. So how were marketers in our industry were they using third-party cookies or are they doing that through services or are they mainly focused on first-party cookies?
I think we're transitioning more to using first party data or first party cookies, more so because consumers are wanting more consent or, they're wanting more control of their data. But
Yeah.
there are a ton of companies, especially in the United States, that are using third party cookies.
Okay.
And I mean, that's a pretty clear example. Just as you're shopping for anything online and you start to see ads that are from a company, but you may have never visited that website, or you may not have shown that you were in that kind of shopping behavior.
Yeah.
Those third party cookies can be very direct in tracking that information because of all of the websites that you visit to and attempt to deliver more relevant ads. But sometimes, obviously, that can get really creepy.
Absolutely. That feels creepy. It's one thing to go to a site and have that particular vendor follow you, but a whole thing altogether when it's somebody you haven't even heard of or visited. So Okay, so what are your advice to marketers? My sense is marketers in industrial aren't necessarily using this or trying to use a third party one, but we sure are using first party.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity with first party data. And that's a lot of what I talked about at IMS. There's various things that you can do, such as implementing a customer data platform or a CDP. There's lots of good options available, Blue Conic, Lytics as an example. But essentially, what it does is it helps identify the known users, the unknown users, the digital footprint of those users, the topics that they visit, and then it creates a unified customer view or unified view of all of those individuals so that you can deliver multi-channel, campaigns. So it delivers across, offsite display, on-site display, social medias, but it is content that the content that's being delivered to you is because you've given that explicit consent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's far more valuable because it's coming straight from the user rather than a third party company or a third party pixel that is saying you might like this. You have, very blatantly said that you're interested in these products or that these are the behaviors and the intentions that you show online.
And as a buyer, I do that by hitting that accept all button or
Yep.
accept certain on websites that everybody has now. GDPR really kicked that off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's
So
interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's
yeah,
interesting.
no, it's good.
The US is still kind of behind the times comparatively to Europe in a lot of ways, especially the DACH region. Um, there's a lot of browsers that when you install them, will automatically not enable cookies on a browser device or on that browser. So you
Wow.
have to click it to allow it. Whereas within the US, most of the browsers, when you download it to a device, it's enabling those cookies right off the bat.
I got you. Okay. Well, turning to the opportunity of for marketers. So you said having a unified view of what the customer's doing. I mean, my first thought is, well, I'm on HubSpot or Marketo. I have something in place and I get a lot of that view, but am I missing things in those tools, Devin?
Yeah, I think in any of those tools, you have a lot of customer supplied information or consumer supplied information.
Yeah.
So, one great opportunity with HubSpot or within your CRM would be to take that customer list and upload it to even things like Google Ads. I mean, let's face it, customer data platforms can be pretty expensive. And for smaller companies that don't necessarily have the marketing budget to implement something like that, uploading a customer list into Google Ads creates a really easy identifiable, audience segment that you can target. But then even within Google Ads, being really precise in how you build out your audience segments based on the types of products that they regularly view on your site, the applications that they're viewing, will enable you not just across your display ads, but across your search campaigns to do observations of which
Hmm.
audiences are performing best or where the return on ad spend is. But Google Ads is an opportunity for anyone, even without a CDP, to really get precise with the targeting based on the customer data that you already have within your CRM.
Okay. So, in other words, not just focused on, okay, I have these names in my database, I've assigned them a persona, but going a layer deeper and looking at behavioral information, like which pages they visited,
Yep,
known product interests, whatever you know about them to do hyper segmentation before you push those ads and
absolutely.
getting really specific.
Yeah,
Okay.
and all of that you can build out within the audience segments on Google Ads. But there's another way that you can target them without having to rely on cookies at all, which would be contextual targeting.
Mhm.
And contextual targeting, for the most part, I mean, it's been around forever. I think it's underutilized in a lot of respect, but it would identify a user based on the content that they're viewing. So, for example, if I'm reading an article about an automated welding system online, the contextual targeting would actually deliver an ad for an IoT sensor, as an example, on that actual article. So it's placing a relevant ad on relevant content. And that's not cookie enabled. It's just based on algorithms that identify certain topics or keywords within the article and then deliver an ad on that very same content.
Okay. I love these tangible examples. All right. So what about someone listening that says, Devin, that sounds great, but we're a startup. We don't have a big database. Like, this doesn't sound very actionable to me. What would you say?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity with the publishers. EETech is a great example with our websites all about circuits for the industrial space with control.com. We get probably, I think across our CDP, the first month we launched, we had about 8.4 million events that we were able to measure. So working with your publishers, working with demand side platforms gives a lot of opportunity for contextual targeting, but who you partner with in that respect. A lot of times, even without the large database, you can still target those users on relevant websites by working directly with those publishers or with implementing not a CDP, but working through a DSP that you can run all of those campaigns yourself, just within your own platform.
Yeah. Okay. So what I heard from you is not only can you partner with publications like EETech, but also you can be really hands-on with this, or you can turn things over and be like, I don't have time. I want you to just figure it out and do this for me.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So a lot of models there. Okay. How do you measure whether or not this is successful? Boy, that's a big thing right now. Is we've lost some metrics, right? As privacy laws have gotten put into place. So, is measurement an issue?
Yeah, Google Analytics, I think, is your first source of data, or first source of measurement. Of course, any platform that you run on is going to show your classic information, such as how many impressions or you've delivered, which would give some branding idea or an idea of how much branding you're getting.
Mhm.
Click-through rate, which would show the customer engagement. Then obviously, the number of clicks, but making sure that you have a UTM parameter tied to any of those click-through URLs would track directly into GA4 or Google Analytics so that you can identify the source and the medium of that traffic. And then, with certain things set up in Google Analytics, you can then determine your return on ad spend down to dollars if you want. There's all types of key events that you could measure within
Yeah.
GA4 that would really identify whether or not a campaign is performing and meeting expectations.
Okay. So UTM stands for.
It's the Urchin Tracking Module, which is a weird term, and I don't know where or who came up with it, but yeah, UTM is just an Urchin Tracking Module.
Okay.
If you do a Google search for URL builder, Google has a really easy platform to build out a URL that includes, the campaign name, the source, the medium, that would track all back to your GA4 platform.
Okay. Got you. So are you driving people to a specific campaign URL to improve trackability? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And even for
Okay.
branding campaigns, if you're
Yeah.
just driving traffic to the main page of your website,
Oh,
but you want to be,
terrible. Yeah.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of opportunity there for brand and brand awareness, but
Yeah.
if you build out a UTM for that, you could, determine the success of one piece of creative versus another with different UTMs tied to that. So,
Okay.
in a split test or an A/B test type campaign, you could say that, this creative outperformed the other. And then for any other upcoming campaign, what types of things that consumer is more likely to engage with, and then
Yeah.
optimize your campaign accordingly.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying. So, if marketers are listening and they're interested, but they're like, oh, I don't know, tell me how EE Tech works. So, you mentioned all about circuits and control.com. Those are what I consider to be pretty, traditional industry online sites. And I know you have some podcasts associated with that. And then there's
Yep.
this other side of the business, which is called what? Performance marketing, or what's the name?
Yeah, so we're basically broken up into, content. We on the media side, it's kind of content performance marketing. We
Mhm.
also have a team of people that builds websites, that develops certain things as far as search pathways, so that people can search for specific products. We kind of do a variety of things within the community side, but then
Yeah.
also on the website development, and then we also partner with a great company with respect to search engine optimization.
Got you. Okay, so a lot of different things to go check out there. Well, if marketers are launching a campaign right now and they'd like to lean into this personalization and contextual advertising, you have any just pieces of advice, whether how to get started or how to do things better? Anything we haven't covered today?
I think we've covered a lot. I think that if depending on personas and things like that, I'm always happy to give advice as far as how they might launch a campaign or opportunities that you might find within developing personas, or how to implement a CDP, or specific ways that you might set up a contextual targeting campaign within Google Ads or those platforms that are very freely and easily accessible to most marketers. I'm definitely happy to help out with any of those details, but it's kind of just do your research. There's a lot of different tools available to all of us. And of course, AI will give you a lot of opportunity and things to research. Don't just take AI's word for it, though. Do some additional research on top of that. But I'm always happy to help on anything like that. But my biggest piece of advice is use GA4, look at Google Ads, build out your audience segments. If you have a large enough database of users, push that into Google Ads, but also explore looking at a customer data platform so that you can create that unified customer view and then deliver a multi-channel targeted campaign.
Okay, nice summary. Great. Well, where can people connect with you and learn more about EETech?
Yeah, LinkedIn would probably be the best option. And I'm trying to think, I don't know if I had a QR code or anything like that for LinkedIn, but LinkedIn's a great opportunity, or just Devin at EETech.com. And my name is spelled a little different. It's DEVON at EETech.com. Sometimes they go with an I versus an E, but that is probably the most accessible way.
Okay, well, we'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes so everybody can look for that when you're not driving or on the treadmill. Well, great to see you, Devin. Thanks for stopping by and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and RA newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.